It's Spoilerin time, ladies and gentlemen. What that means to you is we're going to take some TV shows and movies we've been watching, and we're just going to keep spoiling them. Just spoil upon spoil upon spoil until we can no longer spoil them anymore. Joining me, as he does every week, to spoil these TV shows and movies is Brian Brushwood.
People say we shouldn't spoil it. I say it's our right as victors. We went, we paid, we viewed them with our eyeballs. The spoils of movies are our birthright.
We are citizens of the world. We are human beings. And joining us in this effort is Veronica Belmont as well.
Hello. Wow, that was a lot of stuff. Let's kick off this segment.
I'm sorry we didn't tell you. You're in a cult. We go around, we take the spoils of movies, and we claim ownership of them.
We pretend we're collecting for charity before movies, but really we just spoil people.
Well, I feel bad because I haven't seen most of the stuff you guys have been watching lately. I've only seen Game of Thrones.
I know you're going to have to bail after we do Game of Thrones, but here's the docket. We're going to finish with the S.H.I.E.L.D. episode 8, season 5. We're going to talk about Daredevil.
Right on time.
Wait, what? Is that Justin Robert Young? I was just you as our special secret guest after the rundown there, but
I couldn't help it. I wanted to make a joke about how you guys are spoiling the S.H.I.E.L.D. a full 2 decades after it came out.
Oh yeah, and yet we still have to be delicate about it.
Like, by the way, season 5, episode 8, just in case you weren't there before 9/11 when it aired.
Right, exactly.
More currently, Daredevil episodes 8 through 12, Avengers: Age of Ultron, as I mentioned, Game of Thrones episode 4, the last of the leaked episodes, which maybe you already saw a long time ago. But let's start with the movie draft update.
Movie draft!
Spoken Brian Brushwood, and Furious 7 is more popular than Avengers.
Yeah, man. I guess the script, there must have been a problem with the script, because the script said that at $80, Amtrekker had scored a bargain for Avengers: Age of Ultron, and that he was going to win because it was clearly going to make $1 billion. But these latest numbers, $191 million opening weekend, that
it's huge. It's record-setting.
Not big enough, not as big as the Avengers 1.
But not by much. I mean, like it barely didn't hit the Avengers 1 mark. It is certainly troubling if you're Amtrekker in terms of the movie draft, considering how much they paid. The big question is going to be what the hold is. You know, if you listen to Marvel and Disney, they're going to tell you that because of the Pacquiao Mayweather fight. A lot of people who would have went out on Saturday night did not go out on Saturday night. I tend to think that's a little bit of an excuse. I think that this doesn't necessarily say so much about the Avengers. It says more about just, man, the good times are gone. When it comes to movies, man, like
the whole well, you have to see a movie because it's the weekend, and the weekends are built for movies.
It's just not like that no more.
Yeah,
I don't agree with you.
I
think
pay
that's
$100
crazy
to see a fight.
Look at the box office in general is down, and the refrain was always, yeah, well, last year you didn't have a lot of gigantic titles. Now we've got the gigantic titles. There's only one bigger title than Avengers 2, and that is Star Wars. And if Star Wars does not perform to expectations, then we're done with this gigantic domestically movie
keep
making.
In mind, this
worldwide, it has never been bigger.
That's correct. And both Steven Spielberg and George Lucas, we talked about this on the show before, they predicted that we're going to stop seeing the giant popcorn blockbusters, and instead we're going to see more lower-priced, more independent-type films are the way things are going to go, because you don't have this one gate to funnel everyone through. And by the way, Star Wars, as a matter of fact, it didn't show up in the doc, but I saw projections of $1.7 billion worldwide, possibly $2 billion worldwide for Star Wars. I mean, those are big numbers to try to hit.
It's the biggest movie of the summer, and it doesn't come out until December.
Yes, exactly. So
I can't believe Terminator is actually coming out. Finally, I feel like I've seen that preview in the movie theaters for 6 years.
Oh, I've seen the movie.
No, oh my God! I hadn't seen that new trailer. I saw that new trailer in front of Avengers, and I'm like, why did you do that?
There's a different trailer from the one that I just saw last night during X Machina.
I didn't see either of those. They didn't have either of those Terminator trailers in Ultron when I saw it
Well,
yesterday.
did you see? I almost don't want to spoil what's in the trailer because it was ridiculous.
Because we're not here to spoil the Terminator trailer necessarily.
oh, yeah,
But
yeah,
it is
spoil me,
really
spoil me.
spoilery. Like they give away the pivot point of the movie.
Is that when Arnold Schwarzenegger shows up? I guess?
No!
No.
No, he's been in all the trailers.
No.
Well, yeah, I don't know then.
John Connor is in the movie as a T-1000, except he's not exactly a T-1000. He's actually a Terminator augmented actual John Connor. John Connor is the villain of the movie.
Wait, and they would spoil that in the ads?
Yes!
That
Wow.
sucks. I wonder if they're really trying to just drum up any attention because the reception has been so like, ugh.
I thought it was weird
like,
ever
maybe
since
they just
that.
want people like, oh, that's kind of cool. Maybe I will go see this movie after all.
I thought it was weird ever since that first trailer where they had Jai Courtney, who I guess is Kyle Reese in the movie, and he's like, "Oh, let me go back." And then every time you've seen in the Terminator movies, they appear naked, like
Sure.
in a random thing. Except like you see for the first time somebody actually on the other end of it, on the future end of it, and he's like surrounded by the entire army. He's like hanging from a thing naked while like everyone's like looking at his wiener.
So wait, what? They have the technology to send entire human beings back, but they can't send back his shorts? Like,
know.
how does this make
Well, and
any
plus
sense?
also they make it clear, like apparently they can send whatever they want as long as it's inside human skin or whatever. It's like I'd have these.
Why not create a
cloned-
human skin sack to send some clothes?
Ex-
Oh, is that
Exactly.
it? Is that real? Is that what they say?
Yeah, well, that's how the Terminator
that's
goes
how
back.
they've
is-
retconned why
Oh, all right,
everybody
whatever.
needs to look like a thing, and they can't just keep an open portal and just funnel a billion robots through.
Who cares? Skin
Gotcha.
sack. Title of this episode. Hey,
As Still at Work says, cotton may be the fabric of our lives, but not of time travel.
No, it's not.
so we got coming up.
I didn't
Next
realize
week.
that was
Sorry.
Oh, I was.
I didn't realize that was part of the original Terminator. It's been so long since I've seen those films. I'm not up to date on my mythology.
Well, it just, it was there initially because it looked awesome when in his prime Arnold Schwarzenegger was Adonis posing,
Yeah.
with rippling muscles in the middle of like a dirty parking lot. That was like a cool looking thing with lightning bolts striking around it, and it forever. Now
Well,
it's like
and
a
it also neatly covered up the why don't you just bring back future space lasers?
Yeah.
And then they're like, because they're not inside the skin. Shut up. But at any rate, next week we got Hot Pursuit, right, Tom?
That is correct. Your first movie team night attack. How do you feel about Hot Pursuit, this comedy that you paid $11 for?
I feel like it's gonna take down Ultron in the fastest decline
Ah!
in all of history. Hot Pursuit fever, catch it.
Man, I mean, ladies, who wants to go see a movie with Sofia Vergara and Reese Witherspoon? One has tits and the other doesn't. It's Hot Pursuit.
Dun dun dun.
Hey, at least they're advertising it a lot.
Veronica's horrified by that.
That's yeah.
Yeah.
rightly
So
so,
Avengers
for the
Age of Ultron will be the box office winner next week. That is my prediction. We will see it probably, if not catch Furious 7, get pretty close to matching it. And it will still be a worse buy per dollar spent.
It may end up being one of the. No, it won't be one of the worst.
I mean, frankly, Andrew Zarian made close to $9 million. He'll probably top over $9 million per dollar spent on Furious 7. Right
great.
now, Ultron is 2.4. It might get 5 or 6, but it's not even going to come close.
Yep, I agree.
Well, but you don't necessarily buy that movie if you're the strategy to win.
That's a
with
good point.
movie
Where
like
does this
that-
top out, Justin?
I mean, I don't know where it tops out. I think it'll be the top grossing movie of the summer, but if you're with your strategy like that, you just pay what you need to do for that, and then you hope with whatever you have in the remainder, you can find 2 surprises. So the bigger question for Team Amtrekker is whether or not their other movies surprise enough to make them competitive.
Insidious Chapter 3 and Spy. How much do they need to make?
I mean, Paul Feig, again, female-driven comedy has overperformed over the last 2 years, and that is the one hope that we have for Hot Pursuit.
Right, but I do feel like Spy's going to outperform Hot Pursuit.
Likely so, except for the fact that Melissa McCarthy doesn't look like Melissa McCarthy, and she's not playing a Melissa McCarthy role.
It looks like it from the ads, but maybe
No.
not.
She's playing a role that she would play, but
Right.
like predominantly Melissa McCarthy plays the loud, boorish, chug a beer and burp kind of character.
Right.
This is like a studious, like, she's more
Oh, that's-
Milton from Office Space.
That's right. I forgot all about that because what I was thinking of is the poster show her like doing some kind of crazy dive slide or whatever.
Oh yeah,
which I don't know. If
Which
that's-
that looks like Melissa McCarthy.
Yeah,
but,
correct. Yeah.
we'll see. I mean, this is the big question with Hot Pursuit is whether or not Sofia Vergara is a movie draw, which I don't think she necessarily is. And
I mean,
what cachet Reese Witherspoon has. Is Reese Witherspoon closer to Sandra Bullock than she is irrelevant?
Here's the conversation you want people to be having next week. Honey, I know we missed Avengers because of the fight, but I really want to see Hot Pursuit. Sofia Vergara's in it. Reese Witherspoon's in it. All right, I've been hearing some weird things about Avengers anyway, baby. Let's go.
If you are having that conversation, please record it and send it into the show.
Amazing.
All right, let's move on to Game of Thrones, Episode 4, Season 5. This is the one about Sons of the Harpy, I think is what it's called. And it has Sons of the Harpy, getting all harpy. Probably the closest thing to what happened in the books of anything that happened in here, except for who is injured and possibly dying or dead at the end of that scene.
So,
oh man,
we all read the books here, right? And this is not necessarily a book spoiler. This is a book.
People don't
question.
like it when we spoil the books ahead of the show.
Okay, but here's my is Selmy dead in the books? Does Selmy get killed in the books? Right, I didn't think so.
Correct. And we were warned ahead of time. They said, by the way, this season people will die that didn't die in the book, and
Let's
seems
put it
like
this way. Those events that were depicted on this episode have not happened in the books.
Right. So it could potentially maybe still happen, or probably not in the same way, perhaps. But it might still happen.
Well, I mean, but it's being used as a catalyst to get us to a point that already happens in the books, and they seem to be setting up to transpire. Can we just say it now? Hey, George R. Martin, take all the time you need, bro. This is being told a little bit better on the show.
You know what? You know what's cool is pub crawls and the NFL. You should blog about those a lot. And don't.
I mean, just so you know, like you told everything that you need to Benioff and Weiss, right? Like you told everything. If you told everything, then take your time. That's fine. I am thoroughly enjoying this season, and it is taking material that I found very tedious in the most recent book and making it awesome.
Okay. I had a big major shift from my perception of where I think the book and the TV show are going in this episode, with Sansa, because things are definitely different for Sansa right now, because it was supposed to be Arya who was being married off to a Bolton.
Fake Arya.
Fake Arya. Yes. And now I always thought the book was going to culminate Ice and Fire with Jon and Daenerys somehow, but now I feel like it's going to be Sansa and Daenerys, and that Jon is not. I don't know why. I always thought it was going to be Jon and Daenerys, not necessily together, but at the end being the two.
I don't know. The only reason I don't think that Sansa is getting privileged in that way is they were dropping Rhaegar hints in this episode all over the place.
Yes, they were. They mentioned him
and
a
the
lot.
whole thing about Rhaegar is that Rhaegar is actually Jon Snow's father, right? That's the theory.
Yes,
that's not a spoiler. That's just a guess. Yeah, and in this episode, they put it in the previously on about Rhaegar, and they just kept bringing up Rhaegar. By the way, did we mention Rhaegar? Rhaegar really loved her. Remember when he passed his wife and went up to her? Boy, Rhaegar sure did some Rhaegar things. Remember what they used to say about Rhaegar? I mean, they were shoving that in your face in a way that it hasn't been in the book.
That's true. But I don't know. I feel I would like it to work out that way too. Or maybe Jon doesn't overall rule. I don't know. Who knows?
So
I like that idea, though.
As long as we're talking about the books, I prefer to talk about the books in only in terms of how they differ from the story. How about that scene where they presented Stannis, if not human, then the most authentically human-like cyborg version of Stannis that we've seen in anything? Like they do such a good job of making him so standoffish that just the act of a reluctant pat on the back awkwardly to his child.
We were standing there watching that clip being like, just put your arms around her. Just lift your arms and put them around your child. And then we were like, okay, now kiss her head. Okay, close enough. You kind of smelled her hair. That's I'll take it.
That was too much. We pushed you too far. That's I apologize. They're doing a really, really good job of making him, beyond the first episode, somebody that you really want to see kick the crap out of the bastard of Bolton. And that's important. You know, this season so far has done a great job in the first 4 episodes of being effective exposition and table setting while having it not feel like we're just moving pieces around the board. You know, you've done really, really good kind of fight hype. You know, you've got this fight brewing in Marine. You've got this fight brewing in the North. All of the major players are kind of beginning to put their pieces into like active motion. They're kind of showing their hand a little bit. Varys with Tyrion, Littlefinger with Sansa, and as well as, of course, in King's Landing between Cersei and Tyrell.
Yeah. Well, I guess but also like there's that naked power grab where it's like Cersei doesn't have any moves, and so she knows how to be petty, and she knows that that she can grab a coalition that'll back this idea of a religious army, and having her hand in there, I bet.
She has Michael Caine in her ear saying, you know, you turned to a man that you might not have trusted because you were afraid.
Yeah.
Well, and this is interesting too, because this is a very strong Cersei. This is a Cersei still manipulating. This is a Cersei still planning and scheming, sending Jaime to Dorne. That doesn't happen in the books. Manipulating the High Sparrow into becoming the new chief, whatever, High Septon. That's not the way it happens. This is a really strong Cersei that is a threat in a way that she might not have been if she'd just fallen apart.
Well, yes. she's backed into a corner. Well, she has no power right now, and she has rapidly diminishing power with every second. So,
but in the book, she is falling apart in that same situation. So all I'm saying is, like, this is an interesting take where she's still a player in this game now.
Well, in the books, you know, she's almost more power mad. Like they're, because they don't get married so fast in the books. Tommen and
no, they certainly don't consummate in the books.
Well, and Tommen is like 6 years old.
He's a child, so it's like
9, I guess maybe.
So she is the effective ruler of Westeros in the books through most of this story. So a lot of this kind of movement is her being power mad on every element of her life, including a odd, kind of out of nowhere lesbian sex scene.
Can I give a giant thumbs up and high five to the buddy bromance action comedy of
they do
Bronn.
This every year.
I love it.
Right? It was like Bronn and Tyrion and Jaime and Brienne.
Right.
Like there's always this element. No matter what, they make it this like on the road buddy comedy of like, man, I'm getting too old for this.
Well, and to be honest, like I liked the fight scene, and you know, you get this, I don't want to say fear, but it's like, you know, it's first time back in the game with the left hand and stuff, and you know, it looks like he's screwed, and then the novel way that his golden hand stops the sword.
I don't know about you guys, you probably saw it coming, but I forgot about the hand, and so when the knife came down, I'm like, or the sword came down and it clanked, I'm like, oh right, of course. And they made it play off as if Jaime didn't even realize that was going to work the way it worked. And it was a great comedic moment where he can't get the sword out of the hand, too.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was really funny. Yeah, but it's I like some of the changes. I think that they're taking it in a good direction, and I like the not knowing exactly what's going to happen anymore. I think that was one of the things I was the most worried about when I first learned that they were going off script, so to speak. But now it gives me something to look forward to because I'm just as in the dark as anyone else at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah. We might get like airplanes show up.
Man, so it's
extraterrestrials.
The whole Jorah stealing Tyrion thing, I feel like I don't even want to say anything because all I want to do is speculate based on knowledge from the books. And so, but they're definitely going somewhere. They certainly look like they're starting to talk.
What little happened here is pretty consistent with what we know would happen. He knocks him out for a different reason, I think.
Exactly.
If I remember. But otherwise, yeah.
I'm very glad that they cut the 30 to 40% of Tyrion's story from the last book and just got to this part of his story.
Well, you guys remember the books better than I do.
I'm just looking at the Wired story. You guys want to catch up on like what actually happened in the book, what happened in TV show? Go to Wired, read their recaps. They're excellent at doing a good recap of what happened and what it means versus like, oh, and this is what actually happened in the books.
Right on.
And that is it for the Game of the Thrones. Unless there are any last words.
Well, I guess that means that it's it for me for this episode.
There's the door, Belmont. But no, thank you for joining us. We just don't want to spoil her on Avengers before she sees it. So let folks know where they can find more Veronica Belmont until next time.
VeronicaBelmont.com. Every Monday I'm on DTNS with Tom and also on the morning stream with Scott Johnson and Sword and Laser, of course, every other week bringing you the best and newest in sci-fi fantasy.
Sometimes talk about Game of Thrones.
Sometimes we do.
Oh, snap. I thought the dancing scene with Vision was weird, Veronica, just keep a lookout for that.
Well, the choreographed dance number, it's like they've never rehearsed it, so why would they all burst into it?
It was just odd,
though.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, then when they revealed that they were all being controlled by the alien suit from Spider-Man.
Like, how did they get the rights to that?
That's odd, yeah.
It's
weird.
crazy.
I don't know why they did that in the movie.
All right, let's talk about Avengers: Age of Ultron for real.
Avengers.
Can we? Spoiler alert! I don't know that Justin and I are going to feel the same way about the movie, so I would want most to hear.
You have different opinions.
I want most to hear your take, Tom.
My take was the chicken quesadilla was probably a little undercooked because my stomach.
Oh, that's right. You went to the faux draft house.
Yeah. So for one thing, I had a very comfortable seat because the AMC dine-in theaters give you these like reclining lazy boy type chairs, which are awesome. I had myself a pint of beer as I watched the movie, so I was predisposed to enjoy myself, and I did. My thing about it is it felt like connective tissue. This is what Eileen and I were talking about a lot after we saw it. It felt like a movie that is part of a 3-part story that the first part was amazing and stood alone and was fun. And this one couldn't be fun because it has to get you to this other place to set up the third movie. And they have to show you the Infinity Gauntlet and they have to have some controversy between the players. And so it just felt a little uneven. Some of the jokes were hilarious. Some of them felt forced. It just felt a little dark where maybe you didn't want it to be dark. But mostly I enjoyed it. With those criticisms in mind, I still had a good time. Just not as good as the original one.
I also had a fantastic. This was the first time in 2 weeks that I went off the leash on my diet, so I got to have whatever pizza I wanted. First time I took a family to the movies in this year in 2015. It was at the Alamo Drafthouse. I will say, strangely, Alamo Drafthouse. This is also the first time I went there, and their pre-show felt kind of disappointingly grown up. Normally it's these raw clips that they grab from wherever, but now they're all edited together and they give information on where stuff they're crediting appropriately because apparently I assume behind the scenes there's some pushback on what content they can and can't do. At any rate, so it felt a little more polished than I was accustomed to. I liked it a lot as an experienced outing with my family. However, all I can remember are the things that weren't in this movie that almost were and almost should have been. Ultron had the chance to be an utterly sympathetic anti-hero. If we just had a little more time of the logical, have us believe in him a little bit more and then let us almost make that jump and realize, oh, wait, no, you're crazy. Wait, we're not supposed to like you. You're the bad guy. They told us that he's all the crappy parts of Tony Stark embodied in a robot, rather than showing us, rather than letting us figure that out. I understand as a second act, that is where you should have characters fight with each other. Unfortunately, they should have acknowledged, you know what the whole first movie was? All the Avengers fighting with each other. So when they got to fighting again, that wasn't fun or even interesting for me. I'm like, well, I guess we have to watch them all fight again. And I understand, yes, on episode 3, you're going to have this, you're setting up this massive thing, and the story of the Avengers is you have a rotating cast of regulars. But that was an awful lot, War Machine's entire arc was, he sure did get a good story to tell finally, also, one thing that never happened in the first Avengers is you did not have a single line of comedy fall flat. And there was a lot of jokes that fell flat in Age of Ultron. So, again, on balance, there were great moments, but I can't even put it within 20% of as good as the first Avengers.
I guess I like the movie, and from the sounds of it, I liked it more than you guys did. I liked it more than the first Avengers, but I think that has probably more to do with what I thought of the first Avengers more than it does what I thought of this one. This was a more Whedon-y script than the first one. Ultron, I think, should have been voiced by Joss Whedon, just so it could just actually be him, and they should have just mocapped his face. It's if you do not. So here's where I have found in talking to people about this movie, where people's disappointment comes in. It is on either your expectation of what an Avengers movie should be, and there's no wrong answer to that.
Right.
For me, it is witty banter between the players that doesn't completely invalidate the characters that we have already come to know and love, and big action set pieces. The story of an Avengers movie, for me, is more about the group, the Avengers, than the people that make them up. We have standalone movies for that stuff. We get all the characters, like in Civil War, that's going to be a really hard movie to do because you're going to have 4 major characters, including 2 sub-characters in Black Widow and Falcon, that I'm going to expect character movement on all of. With Avengers, I don't really expect that. If they all fight and then they fight amongst each other and then they go do other stuff, that's fine. It didn't bother me that this movie was beat for beat exactly the first movie, right down to the Hulk freaking out and fighting people because of a weird mind control thing that was introduced in the first act. The other element is if you are not comfortable with the Joss Whedon, everybody has Gilmore Girls level banter and references, then you are going. There's more of that. It is more like that in this movie than it was in the first movie, and including Ultron specifically, because Loki was of another world and therefore can't just make kind of pop culture references and have very normal cadence.
Right.
I don't mind that. I think that's where when you say things fall flat more, it reminds me more of a Whedon of the Whedon scripts in Firefly, where it's a lot of like rapid fire jokes and some hit, some don't. But in a television show, you don't really think of it all that much in the same way you do a 2-hour movie where you are like leading up to it and you have more expectations for. So there's nothing you guys have said that I necessarily disagree with. It's just that my expectations for the movie, and the same in like my expectations for Avengers 1. There's a crap ton of plot holes. I thought that the writing was a lot spottier than apparently you did in Avengers 1. But I liked it because it was a bunch of people that I liked in other movies getting together and fighting somebody. And then they did the same thing in this one. Right down to the fact, exactly the same thing. Right down to the fact that it ends with Thanos saying like, "No, but for real this time I'm coming."
Yeah. It's that was almost disappointing because again, it's not bad. Did any of you guys feel like chumps sitting waiting until after the credits?
No. They said it. Joss Whedon
already
said,
do.
Yeah. There was only going to be a mid.
Was very vocal about don't expect anything at the very end.
Okay, well, I didn't get that email, and so sure enough.
I guess you were too busy raising 3 kids.
Well, and what's funny is I was the sucker on the first Avengers movie because after it they had the whole reveal of Thanos thing,
yeah,
and I was like, oh, they just showed it now, and now it's just boring credits, so I guess they're done. And then I left, and then everyone was giving me a hard time, being like, what are you doing leaving? It's a Marvel movie. You're supposed to stay till after the credits. And I missed out on it. I'm like, well, fool me twice, shame on me.
Yeah.
And so sure enough, nope, fool me twice.
Everybody leaves.
There was a good half. I mean, I don't know what the AMC dine-in capacity is, but it's smaller than a normal theater. I'd say a good half of the room was like, what? Wait a minute. Because like everybody stayed till the end. And we knew, we just stayed because we always stay. We just kind of stay and get comfortable and wait for other people to leave. And then nobody left, and we're like, "Oh crap!"
Yeah, I got to see a pack, like a Cub Scout pack of 8-year-olds. You're like, "Yeah, like full on in chorus."
Just the ASPCA thing. That's it.
It's amazing.
Can we? This is something that we talked about on the spoiler show with Scott. So isn't it really obvious right now that Joss Whedon has like real beef with Marvel?
What do you mean? Oh,
Like-
by the way, I did thought it was very clever the way they handled. Do you notice that they never once say the word Scarlet Witch or Quicksilver? It's just they're just too creative. They don't even indicate that they were born with those abilities.
I thought they couldn't say Quicksilver, but they could say Scarlet Witch. Or could they not use either one?
I don't know. I did not notice them saying either. I did not notice them indicate flatly whether or not they were born with these
Oh
abilities.
no! They
or-
volunteered for the enhancement project, so
Right.
they were given those abilities, and they certainly aren't mutants, and they certainly aren't Magneto's children. Do you hear that, Fox lawyers?
Yes, exactly.
So let me talk about this Joss Whedon thing real quick.
Yeah, sure.
So during the press tour, some kind of uncharacteristically catty things, like says that Edgar Wright's Ant-Man script was the best thing that Marvel ever had, and they were dumb to let it go. Says that he made more money on Dr. Horrible's sing-along blog than he did directing the first Avengers.
Wow.
And then today on the podcast with Empire goes out of his way to say, detail exactly the beef he had with Marvel on this movie. Said that it was painful. It got really uncomfortable between him and Marvel. And then there was, I think, one other thing that and then
God.
today he deleted his Twitter account.
What?
I am not going to be shocked when in 3 months, 5 months, especially probably during Joss Whedon's next big project, he is very candid about Kevin Feige and the leadership at Marvel and how much he has distanced himself from it. Are you ready for the oncoming war of the Whedon versus Marvel?
Oh, dude. I mean, are we going to get to see like a Marvel-esque epic version of Dan Harmon getting fired from his own show? Are we all going to have to like, stand with Whedon when Avengers 3 is directed by someone else?
Number one, I will not. I will be standing with the Sony in that situation because, from what he described in the Empire podcast, Marvel wanted all the farm stuff cut.
What's the Empire podcast? Is that
Empire Magazine, the British film
got it.
magazine.
Okay, got it.
Marvel wanted all the farm scenes cut. They didn't like them. And they wanted all the dream sequences cut. And they wanted more character development between the other players and less on the dream sequences and less on that. And apparently Joss Whedon hates the cave scene with Thor, which does feel a little like tacked on just to get to. It's like Stellan Skarsgård's like, hey, there's a pool.
Yeah.
Get in the pool. You're going to learn some things. And it's like there's a new movie coming, Thor learns. Then he comes back and says, there's another movie coming in 5 years.
Yeah, the
I just
plot
saw
is-
a trailer in the pool.
Yes, and I guess that's the thing is this movie, and that's not the only scene like that. There is an awful lot of telling and not showing. There's an awful lot of
so listen, the reason why that's in is because Marvel said you need to give us, if you're not going to do it better in the story, you need to set up the Infinity Gauntlet stuff specifically. You need to let the Avengers need to know that this is an oncoming war.
Yeah.
So it makes it more impactful when they split up. And if you're not going to do that in a better way with the main players, because you're spending time showing us that Hawkeye has feelings and having him argue over which room the Hulk is going to sleep in.
Right.
Then we just got to do it here. And so the way Joss Whedon describes it is that Marvel put a gun to the farm scene's head and said, either you give us this cave scene or we kill or we cut and leave it just, shredded.
Right.
The farm scenes. And so he did the cave scene. He caved on the cave.
And while we're at it, just real quick, minor, not nearly the same level gripe, but was it a bit odd when Vision came out and they're all like, who is that? Why does that sound like Jarvis? Except he totally doesn't sound like Jarvis. He just has a British, it's like Jarvis has had a very characteristic robotic lilt to his English voice for 5 movies now. And then it's like, well, this guy's British. It sounds like, just say it sounds like Jarvis.
Well,
and it's
he's the voice of Jarvis.
then give me the robot velvetiness in there. Let him actually
didn't bother me at
sound
all.
like Jarvis.
I was fine with it.
Yeah, I don't know. It
Yeah.
sounded like Paul. I mean, he's like, It should have been like, why does Jarvis sound like Paul Bettany? And why does this guy look and sound like Paul Bettany?
No. Okay, whatever. It's that's fine.
All British people sound alike. Just go ahead and say.
Well, I mean, I don't want to be
Anglicist?
yes.
Accentist.
There you go.
Yeah.
And apparently Loki was in the Thor dream sequence and they cut him out.
Why?
Because Marvel hated the dream sequences and they're like, just stop it. Enough with these dream sequences.
Man.
Because
I liked
also-
the dream sequences. I'm not sure how I felt about the farm. I liked it while it was happening because I'm like, oh, this is really interesting. Getting to see that Black Widow and Hawkeye's previously unknown wife get along, and she's like kind of the unofficial auntie. Like that was a cool look, but it also stopped down the movie for me a little bit. So I could never decide if it stopped it down too much to if that caused some of my impatience later, maybe, or if it was just a great Whedon-esque look behind the scenes, because I did like that aspect.
I mean, if anything, I do think this movie, which again I enjoyed, is a sign that both Whedon and Marvel are going to be better apart. Like I enjoy. I think he has been an invaluable contributor to one of the most profitable and I would say in terms of geek pop culture important franchises in cinema history. But the work that they will each do without each other, I think, will be better now at this point in their careers, which is fine. Like, that's not to say that either is bad. I'm going to be excited for the next Joss Whedon movie. I'm going to be excited for a Marvel Cinematic Universe that is helmed more by James Gunn and the Russo brothers than Joss Whedon, because I think they just work better in that system. And it is a system like Pixar's a system,
right?
And it's like, auteurs would not work well in Pixar. The people who are good collaborators work well. So it's like Quentin Tarantino would not work well in a Pixar because Quentin Tarantino writes a script, doesn't let anybody touch it, shoots a movie, and screams and yells if anybody wants to make cuts about it.
Right.
That's not what Pixar does. It's not what Marvel does. They're very collaborative. And I think Joss Whedon hit his limit of how much of that kind of collaborator he was going to be in that system, where the Russo brothers and James Gunn, who, listen, James Gunn came from Troma. He's like, what? I get money and I can have prestige and do movies that I really like? Like, whatever. Yeah. You want me to cut that? I'll figure out another way to do it. And the Russo brothers from television are just going to be better stewards for Marvel going forward.
Interesting.
All right. I think, based on what Justin just said, that Joss Whedon's better off working for Amazon or maybe Netflix. So let's talk a little bit about Marvel's universe in Netflix. Where you might
that's
have
going to be
a
it
little
for
less.
me. I'm going to leave because I haven't seen Daredevil. So
Man, yeah, no.
let me
Justin's
tell you
only
the end
watched the
before you
first
go.
one.
what was that?
Nothing.
Oh, God damn it. Daredevil wins. All right, bye.
All right.
He gets the suit. Yeah, so he becomes Daredevil. Somebody, and I wish I could remember who, is one of our regular listeners, and I apologize for my faulty memory, explained Daredevil last week when we hadn't got close to the end as a really great origin story. And now that I have completed it, and I know you're episode and a half behind me.
Well, sure,
Brian.
but I mean, I could read between the lines.
Yeah.
I could see the cover art.
You see that now, right? Like, that is exactly what they did. They instead of forcing an origin story on us in the first episode and then like trying to build on it with a procedural, they said, well, let's just tell a really good origin story that can be self-contained in every episode, that will make you actually understand these characters and use the tropes of mystery and crime procedurals to tell that part of the story, so that Kingpin you see as a real human being with real motivations that becomes the Kingpin that you know, where Daredevil becomes Daredevil in a way that you learn and understand. And I think without getting into any of the details of any of the episodes, is the brilliance of this series, and why, in my opinion, I think it may be my favorite Netflix series that they've done yet.
First of all, I agree 100% with that, because going to Face Off, it's flat out better than Orange is the New Black. I mean, it's consistent in its tone and its story and its arc. It has better developed characters that are not. What's funny is compared to Orange is the New Black, the characters of Daredevil are far less cartoonish than the characters in Orange is the New Black.
Yeah.
Also, as far as it being an origin story, it is an origin story, but it's also fundamentally different in that the origin story begins in the last 15, 20% of the story. 80% of all the things that have shaped Matt Murdock into the force he's going to be, the only thing we're missing is a name and a suit and him coming out to his friends. And by the way, I adored one of the episodes that we need to talk about is the whole. They spent a full episode just letting Foggy wrap his mind around the fact that Matt has not been playing him, but been less than forthcoming with this, and that he's got a double life. And that, what does this mean? Are you not the Matt I knew? Does that mean this was a lie? That was a lie? That deserved a full hour, because in the course of becoming a superhero, that is an awkward transition conversation to have with somebody. I thought it was amazing.
And flashbacks can be burdensome. Flashbacks can feel contrived. They signal to you like, here's some stuff we need to tell you so you can understand what's going to happen next. And so as a viewer, you sort of learn to tolerate them. I'm not saying every flashback they did in this series was exempt from that feeling for me, but those flashbacks in the Foggy episode felt so native. They felt so naturally motivated. Like, oh yeah, now's the time where I, for the first time, am wondering how they met. For the first time, I'm wondering how they decided to go into practice together. And they're like, here you go, here you go, here you go. Same with the Wilson Fisk flashback, which you had watched last week, but I hadn't. You get to see all the important things about Wilson Fisk that you need to know. And it didn't feel forced. It didn't feel like, now that we've introduced Kingpin, let's show you how he became Wilson Fisk. No, it was like at the moment, it felt natural to be like, oh, okay, yeah. I've learned a little bit about this guy. Now I'm curious to know a little bit more about where he came from and why he acts the way he does.
That's the brilliant part, is they gave all of those flashbacks were important parts of the origin story leading up to it. However, each one was introduced when a new plot element was in the show. Stick shows up, like, who is this guy who is blind and kicks all this ass? And it's like, oh, well, funny you should ask. We have a few. Would you like to see these flashbacks? You're like, yeah, I really want to see, because I want to know about Stick Guy. Oh, I'm also learning about young Matt Murdock. Well, that's convenient. I'm learning both, and it's related to the main story of this particular episode. They did that every single time, and it was brilliant. It's well-paced storytelling. Also, there's no rating on Netflix, but it occurred to me, this is like the first ever rated R Marvel movie I've seen. And and I'm sure there have been. I think Punisher might have been rated R at the time, but it's probably the closest going forward in a Disney world. It's probably the closest we'll have in terms of an R-rated story. Are we seeing right now? You're Googling on it?
Huh? Yeah, I think it's Daredevil, The Punisher, Blade, and Deadpool.
Oh, so coming out, the upcoming set of rated R characters.
These are rated R characters.
Yeah, and this is also coming out. This is forward looking. Yeah, but going
back, I also like how Matt Murdock, and it isn't till the Foggy episode that you realize that he actually has that Daredevil vision, right? Anybody who knows Daredevil knows that he does. They only kind of hint at it though. And it's only when Foggy's like, can you really see? And he's like, kind of, yeah, world on fire. I get it. Right. They didn't overdo that. And so you get little pieces. You learn Matt Murdock in a way that feels organic and you understand his motivations. And the same thing, I think even more so with Wilson Fisk, where you realize, okay, this is just a boy with anger management issues, honestly. Like, I almost feel like, with the right person intervening at the right point in his life, A, his dad's still alive, and B, he doesn't become Kingpin.
Yeah, well, and he is.
And maybe that's what Stick was for Matt Murdock, is the right person intervening at that point. I don't know.
Well, and but again, what's funny is both Matt Murdock and Kingpin are kind of identical in that they both had damaged childhoods, and then they both found themselves empowered later on. The difference is Kingpin handled gaining power like he's still that angry child who throws tantrums, whereas Matt was handed that power, and obviously with different role models. You look at Matt's dad versus Kingpin's dad. He had a different worldview of what should be done with now that he had power. I'm trying really hard not to slip into some Spider-Man talk here.
Right. And I guess the thing that hit me about Fisk is you feel really sympathetic for him. You want him to be happy with Vanessa. You want him to do good for the city. Like maybe he can turn around. Maybe he can change. Maybe Matt Murdock is being too hard on him. Like these are all things that the story is making you wonder, which is perfect as you go along. And then starting with the car door. But then there are more incidents later, and I can't remember which ones are in which episode, so I'll let you give the examples. But there are episodes where his temper overtakes him, and you realize, oh no, he's a dangerous man. He has personal issues that will cause him to lose control, and he should not have responsibility and power that he has.
Yeah, man, I guess, do we want to wrap up? I guess we'll save the last episode. You tell me this. You've watched the last episode. Is it significant enough that we shouldn't just spoil it now?
No, I think it will put a dot and cross a T, dot on an I and across the T for us.
Okay.
And so, yeah, let's stop there and wrap up Daredevil.
Yeah, where I am right now in midway through episode 12, context clues. I know that Ben Urich dies because I accidentally started loading up episode 13 and immediately saw, you immediately look at the pallbearers and then figure out who's missing. We're like, oh, I probably shouldn't have seen that. And I assume, given the fact that we're still at episode 12 and I still haven't seen him in his iconic Daredevil costume yet, although now he's hired a tailor and has, had this stuff happening, I assume we see the emergence of Daredevil as we've come to know him. So I am excited to kind of get that final bookend on everything.
Yeah, and I feel like the last episode is important because it takes you to an ending of the story a couple of ways. And a couple of times. There's a lot happens in that last episode. So
right on.
Let's move on to the S.H.I.E.L.D. Season 5, Episode 8, wherein I learned that Wims apparently had an audition for a movie because she's not in the episode, and all they say is like, she's still in the hospital, so not dead, but also nowhere to be found.
But this is also, the S.H.I.E.L.D. has done this before where they've taken different plot points and pressed pause on them and sort of throw them in cryostasis for a bit to come back later. What did they focus on this one?
Well, this episode's called Kavanaugh, so they focused on Kavanaugh. And you have this cliffhanger ending at the last episode that's like, is Wims going to live? And then the first thing you see is Kavanaugh being Kavanaugh, doing Kavanaugh things. And there's absolutely no indication that you're going to get anything about Wim's story in this until he's talking to Dutch, and Kavanaugh says, like, how's your partner doing? She's okay. She's in the hospital. That's it. That's all you get. But that said, okay, now I know she's alive. And this is Kavanaugh scrabbling to stay a hold of the investigation. He goes at the beginning, very responsibly, meets with Antoine Mitchell. Antoine Mitchell says, I'll give you what you want if you make sure that the strike team gets assigned to this prison. And Kavanaugh's like, no, I'm not going to do that. That is not the kind of deal that I'm doing. That would kill him. And by the end of the episode, the strike team has pissed him off so much that he goes to Antoine Mitchell and is like, yeah, whatever you want. And this is the one where at the end, he's also so upset that he arrests Lem, which is a bad move for him. It's a strategic setback for him, but he is so angry based on all the things that happened with his ex-wife and the mental illness she had, how she manipulated him, how he feels he's being manipulated by Vic, that he just loses it. He's like, fine, I'm arresting that guy right now. Mostly, though, it's because they saw him being vulnerable with his wife, and his temper got the worst of him.
Well, this is the funny part, right? This is where the noose is so clearly around their neck, and that Kavanaugh feels the most empowered, but it's also when he's the most erratic and prone to flying off the handle. And
for multiple reasons, actually. Now that you mentioned this, it's interesting because you have the CI Amoila, who is friendly with Vic now again, but also still working for Kavanaugh. And he's desperately trying to control her. He's worried what Vic's going to do. And we all know Vic's not going to do anything to her.
Right.
But he's so distracted with that he can't focus on the wife. He can't focus on Mrs. Mackey, who's come with the lawyer and said, okay, I'm ready to give you whatever you want. Vic gave me the blessing. I will talk to you. I will tell you anything. I am protected with my lawyer so I can have immunity. And he won't give her immunity. He's like, I'm too distracted right now. So yeah, it's Kavanaugh just running around like a chicken with his head cut off.
Well, and there are things that you can't, not know. Like that this is not the final season that you're watching, so you find yourself suspecting that something's going to go sideways. But at that moment, I just remember thinking like, well, it's done. They're going to jail. They've got the goods, and this, there ain't no getting out of this. And
even it's hard to say, right? Because I do know there are 7 seasons, but I don't know that Lem's character doesn't leave the show. I really don't. Like you could tell me that right now, and I'd believe you. But as a viewer, maybe he leaves the show at the end of this season. Maybe that's a risk the S.H.I.E.L.D. takes. The S.H.I.E.L.D. takes lots of risks. I doubt it, though. And I just don't get the feeling that this is the end, right? It just doesn't feel like that would be the way this goes down. And so when he arrests Lem, and everybody's just like, I am, and the woman's like, I'm out of ink. And he's like, throw him in the cage then. You're like, okay, it's not going to happen this episode, but there's going to be some major fallout from this somehow over the next few episodes. It's going to change the playing ground again.
Yep, and that's not anything I'm going to comment on.
Yeah. And in that case, we are done. Thank you all for being spoiled with us.
Boy, this is a double thick episode this time.
Yeah,
we had special guests all over the place. We had conflict.
Thank you to Veronica Belmont, veronicabelmont.com. Thank you to Justin Robert Young, twitter.com/Justin R. Young. And thank you, Brian.
Thank you, Tom. High five. Boom, right there. Boom. There it is. You're spoiled.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.